Okay, so let's do our next job now. Let's start and write a pure object-oriented class definition in Java. As we were discussing before the break, we'll try to create a simple calculator. Let's complete the class definition first, and if time permits, we'll write the tester. Else, we'll just continue it next week, right? So as I do things, I'll explain what I'm doing, and if you have any questions regarding anything, the structure, why it is being done, or how it could be done better, ask. Okay. Okay, so what, and another thing I just noticed that a student was having problems with the program, right? Keep in mind, you can save Eclipse projects, they're saved. I mean, you can delete them from here if you like. So example, this is done, suppose, and it's kind of irritating that I have it open here. You can always do a right click and say delete, 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 delete. But this is only deleting from the workspace. Don't delete projects on the disk. Don't do that. And if I do an OK, this will no longer show in my workspace. But if you have done this just so that you can keep it organized on the left-hand side, the more you open it, if you don't close it, the next time you open Eclipse, it will automatically be there. But now if you want to open it, this is what you'll have to do. You'll have to go to File. You'll have to say, I want to import a project. You'll go and look where you saved it. So under General, I saved it existing projects into workspace. It's already an Eclipse project, right? It's not coming from file system as a normal folder. You can do that too and go to next and then browse where you've saved it. So mine are saved in courses under Intro to Java and Thursday section. I don't see it. Maybe it will come someday. So under courses, I know it's under courses, Intro to Java. There is Monday. There is Thursday. So I'll double click on Thursday. And under that, I know I called it dialog boxes, right? So I mean, dialog boxes class 1, it seems, whatever. And then say, OK. So you get the whole project in. Once you have it, you will say, yes, I want to it and say finish. And it will reappear back on your window. And now you can open it. And under your source will be everything that you've saved. So you just can't import, you just can't copy and paste a Java file and work with it. I mean, if you need to compile and run it, okay? It has to belong to a project. That's how it works. So this is how you will do it. So you can always close it if it kind of irritates you. And this is you won't see this warnings and question mark and all this. This is something that I did with Git. So I'm getting something there, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with my project. Okay, it's just something that I was playing around with Git to see. So now let's create a new project. So this is how you will work with projects on your own laptops or machines or whatever. Okay, so you can save them. If you don't delete them from the workspace, they'll be open when you come back next. It's your personal machine, right? But if you delete them, remember not to delete them from the disk. Then they are gone. So deleting is only deleting from the workspace. If you really want to delete them, you check that box on which said delete from the disk also, and then it is gone forever. I mean, into your recycle bin or whatever, but it is gone. So to remove it, if it doesn't irritate you, any number of projects on the left-hand side pane doesn't irritate you, that's fine too. Okay, but that's how it is. You just don't go copy and paste a Java file that I give you on Blackboard. You will have to create a new project, create a new file, and then copy my code into it. Okay, you could do that. Then your package and everything has to be the same. Keep that in mind. So that's why I prefer that you give me projects complete so that I don't have to bother about what do you have as your package. Is it different from what I have, and so on and so forth. Okay, I have to see what did you name your class. Then I'll have to create the same class. It's too much work. But if it works for you, I'm fine. Okay, so let's go to our second example now, creating a pure object-oriented class in Java. Okay, so go new, and let's create a Java project. You really have to shift very slowly, right? I don't have my mouse today. That's the problem. I left it at home, and I don't like to work with. Okay, there. Okay, any name that you like, since this is to do with calculator. And just so that I remember, otherwise I forget. Maybe I'll call it lesson 2. That way I can remember. Lesson 2 calculator. And that should be a good enough name for it. Okay, I'll just put lesson numbers with mine so that If somebody comes and says, what did we do in lesson 3 or 2, at least I know what I did. Otherwise, I forget the sequence. So this is for me. You don't have to necessarily name it as I name it. Again, you can use an execution environment, and 1.8 is what I have. Or if there is that, the latest I have is here it just says the number. But you can always say use default GRE. That's the one I have, the 92 one, the latest. Both will work. There is nothing much on the next page. You can always go and see what it is, but there it is. Now we will always create projects. We will always create packages and projects. So again, refresh your memories. A package is basically a name that you give to the collection of your classes. Right now you have a single class. I mean, that's what we did in the first one. You will have 2 classes today, but one of them is basically the tester. But as weeks go on, we'll have more classes. We have to learn how to make objects interact with each other. So maybe one more week, next week, and after that we'll do more than 1 classes. So you're trying to put classes together in packages because that's how it makes sense, right? So related classes go into a package, and usually package names will be unique because, again, as I said, they depend on where you are, and so on. So I'll kind of stick with what I've done. I'll follow my convention, and just again, so that I know lesson 2, I'll kind of add lesson 2 to it. So that's my package statement. It will automatically appear as a package statement in each of your code. Give it anything. This is the convention, all lowercase, separated by periods. Kind of think of it: java.lang, javax.swing, java.awt, java.awt.event. Those are the package names. And even if class names are same, if the package names are different, there is no confusion. Even if 2 programmers have the same class names, but if their package names are different, it actually belongs to the package. So if you import one package, you're using that particular class, or if you qualify it, if you're using the other one, then you qualify it with the package name. So I will always create packages. I don't want to see default packages in your projects, okay? And do a finish. And now step number 3, let's create a class. Oh. Class, there it is. Please remember, class names, Pascal name convention. Okay. Pascal name convention. If it is 1 word, good. If it is more than 1 word, please see that you have. So example, if I wanted to call it simple calculator, this is how I would do it. So the first letter of every word is capitalized in Pascal naming convention. So classes in Java use Pascal case naming convention. It's called Pascal case naming convention. The other one is called camel case. This is Pascal case. Okay. Okay. Anything else that we need to do? We don't need a main in it. We're writing a class definition. The rest is okay. You can, if you like, generate comments, but you won't get much. Okay. So there is your package statement. Before you do anything else, please remember, I need Java doc comments throughout your code, and we will learn how to do them today. So we've already seen this one. You've already seen the author one. You've seen a couple. So let's write a short description here first. So a short description. This class definition is basically defining. That's all it does. It's not creating. So you can say defines a simple calculator that can perform. I'll just go to the different lines so that you can see basic arithmetic operations. And if you like, we can say something like add, subtract, multiply. That's what it does. Then comes the author. And please see that the author name makes sense. It will automatically put the name that you are logged in with. Your username is what it puts. I would like to see the date or the version number, whatever works for you. You can do since. If you notice, there was a since, which basically says in the Java API, since tells you since when is it available. So this class or this method is available since JDK 1.2, JDK 3.0. That's where they use since. And the version numbers are usually 1.0, 1.0.1, whatever. I'll stick to it. That way I'm okay. That's how I want to do them. Yeah, I mean, of course, if you were really doing it and you were doing your version controlling, which you should do using GitHub, then that would make more sense. Okay. So again, just so that you can see more and I can type more. here. Okay. Clear? With these lines 9, 10, and 11, all I'm doing is defining a simple class, public class, name of the class, opening bracket, closing bracket. Okay. And then just so that, as I said, just make it a habit of, it will help you. Okay. Okay, let's start our job. The first job that you do, you could define your instance variables at the top of the class or at the bottom of the class. It really doesn't matter. It's a capsule. Like you shake it, the medicine still remains inside the capsule. The definition of instance variables and methods is still inside. So it really doesn't matter. My preference is just defining it at the top. So let's define the instance variables that basically define a calculator. Right? This instance variables is how you recognize a calculator. How do I look? That definition. Okay. So we discussed this already and we said we will need two numbers for sure. I mean, that's the minimum we want. So private, these instance variables are only available to methods in the class. These instance variables are only available to methods in this class. It is not a rule in Java. There's a lot of controversy on this. People say, why make it private and then write get methods? If you're already giving me get methods and set methods, why not make it public? So programmers there's no consensus on this, that should we make them private, should we make them public? So, but that's how Java started, and that's how I do it. So we keep our data hidden, right? And we make our methods public. So private means this variable, which is of type double, normal double, right? Basic data type double, which I'm calling number 1, is available only to members of this class. Now, you can, if you like, say number 1 comma number 2, but with instance variables in Java, the technique of writing is simply putting one variable per line. That's just how it is, right? You don't have to follow it. With local variables, there is no such rule, right? No such convention. Local variables are written in a line more than one. But with instance variables, the definition is written one variable per line. I don't know why, but that's how it is. If you really work in the industry, you just kind of get into the habit of doing what is. Okay, so those are my two instance variables. So every time an object of this class simple calculator is calculated, every object will have two variables inside it. Number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2. Their values could be different, right? The second thing you must know about instance variables in Java, if you create an object of this class and you do not assign any value to these instance variables, then by default, these instance variables are 0. All numbers are 0. All objects are null. The character variable, any, if any, is the null character. That's how it is initialized. And a Boolean variable is initialized to false, if I'm not mistaken. Right? So that's the default initialization. Numbers to 0, objects to null, character to the null character, and Boolean to false. So you have the option of just writing an empty constructor and do nothing in it. Now, again, for your information, by default, if I just stop it, if I do nothing in this class, that's all I have. By default, an empty default constructor is always created in a class. You could actually create an object of this class. Nothing stops you. It's a valid class. It's not a useful class, but it's a valid class. I can do nothing with these variables, but I can create an object. That can be done. The definition says now you can create an object of this class. The default constructor is called simple calculator, takes no parameters from you, does nothing except create an object. So the object gets created, which is an important thing. But we will write our own constructors. So just so that you can, if you want, we'll also write the default constructor. So every method that I now write in my class will have Java doc comments associated with it. And you will also do it always. Right? So a short description. Just a short description. That's what it does. So basically it's the default that is automatically present, but then you'll say, why are you writing it? Because when you start writing your own constructor, the default is dead. So if you want the default and another constructor, overloading of constructors, then you have to write it yourself. If you are okay with the default, then you don't have to bother. Okay, a constructor is public in nature. A constructor has no return type. It doesn't have a return type. What does it do? I mean, you will say, why not void? If it creates an object, why not void? But that's how it is. A constructor has no return type. It's just a special method whose job is to create an object. That's it. And you can now use that object. Okay. No return type, not even void. The name of the constructor is always the same as the name of the class. That's a rule. I am writing an empty parameter constructor. That's your default constructor actually. Why am I coding it then when it is already available by default? Because I'm going to write another one and then the default is gone. Then it's no longer there. It's only there till you don't write a constructor. Okay, what does it do? I said, I don't even have to do this because that's what I said. By default, they are 0. But just for completeness and also for clarity, I'm going to say this is what happens to my two numbers in my constructor. That's exactly what your constructor does. Yes.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Is this aside from your main? Like is this not?
There is no main in my class. A class definition has no main. That's a Java application. It's something that you run. This is just a definition. It will have instance variables and it will have methods. That's it.
Okay.
That's a definition. Okay. It's a blueprint. Once you create objects out of this blueprint, then you need applications to create an object. This is just a definition. Please keep in mind, a class definition is simply data and methods together. Okay, that's all I'm doing. Don't even think about main. I'm just defining a simple calculator like we discussed. Okay, one constructor done. Try to write the second constructor. So we can do this. Make a copy. Write your Java doc comments again. And this constructor creates a simple calculator object with both numbers initialized to the values provided. It's different. It doesn't initialize it to 0. It initializes it to the values you give it. Now, how do you give values to a method? How do you give values to a method? Input from where?
You can take by scanner or
dialogues.
Through parameters. Through parameters. If you want to give some input to a method, pass it through the parameters. There is no interaction with the user like this. That's different. It's just a definition. The definition says you give me something, I'll do it, and that's how it is. You can press buttons, you can call methods, and all you can do is press buttons. When you press buttons, you can give input, but no scanners, no printing, nothing in the methods. All input is provided via parameters, and all output is given back by the method through the return statement. No printing, no asking, nothing in the methods. All that job is in the main. In the main, you can say, what are your two numbers? Pass it to the constructor. The constructor will create an object with those two numbers. No asking, no printing in classes. You'll say, but we've been doing all the time. Where have you been doing it all the time? In the main method. The main method is your tester. The main method will create an object of the calculator class and use it. There is where you do all that input output, not in a class definition. You've been using so many classes, not maybe so many, but some classes, right? When you want to give an integer to the scanner, to the user, what method do you use? You go input, whatever is the name of your scanner object, dot next int. That's what you do. Right, so you use methods and you provide values. No question asking, no printing. Keep that in your mind, okay? Okay, so now, if I have to initialize these two numbers, they have to be put in through the constructor. And it's quite valid. Think about it. If you create an object, which method do you need to call? The constructor. You want to initialize the data inside your object with some values. What is the logical place to pass it? Through the parameters of the constructor. You'll say, what if I want to change it? We will write a set method to change it. That's how you have to put this in your mind. So put the structure. What am I doing and why am I doing is very important. Once you have the structure, you'll never forget it. Okay, so class definition, we are now concentrating on defining classes. What should be done? Okay, so the two parameters have to come. Why two? Because I have two instance variables. Maybe you will say, I don't want to initialize two, I want to initialize one. Sure, go ahead, the second will be 0. So it is your job that when you create an object of a class, you give values to the instance variables of that object. Otherwise, that object is useless. You'll say, then why the first one? That's okay. I started with 0. I can use the set method to change it. Because 0 plus 0, 0 minus 0, 0 into 0, 0 divided by 0 make no sense. I can always change it. So your first constructor may not be useful even. Why am I seeing the red squiggly under my constructors? What's wrong?
Names are same.
Names are same. And there is no different in parameter list. So overloaded, again, constructors are overloaded. Here's your first example of overloading in your own class. You have overloaded the constructor. What will you pass? You will pass a double. Let me call it the same name just because I'm short of names. You'll say, now what? She has an instance variable called number1 and her parameter is called number1. Won't the compiler get confused? I'll tell you how you can take care of this confusion. I could give it a different name, 1, but you know what? Why should I? Let's do it the way that most programmers do it. So you could call it in number1, just so that it means it is coming as an input. But if you even leave it the same, you can still work. So let me show you. If there is no confusion, then you don't have to do it. But now there is a confusion. There is a number1 that belongs to the class objects instance variable. And there is a number1 which is coming as a parameter. Of course, the poor compiler will have no idea what you're doing. You're saying number1, assign yourself to yourself. And the compiler will follow your instructions. It will take the number1 and assign its value to itself. But which number1? And I'll tell you which number1. This is how it looks for which number1. In this statement, who's the nearest number1 in this particular code? Who is the nearest to this statement? Which number1 is nearest? The parameter. That's what it sees. So you kind of think you're here. You can see your surroundings. You don't find it, go out. Cannot find it, go out. Cannot find it, go out. Okay. So you're inside the constructor. It looks at a variable called number1. It tries to find it within itself. There is no local variable, but there is a parameter by that name. So first of all, it will look locally. No local variable. Parameters are also local, but they're not called local variables. They are just called local parameters. Okay, but they are local. Then it says, oh, no local variable by that name. It kind of say, let's look ahead. It finds a number1 in the parameter list. Oh, that's the number1 you are referring to. So useless job, but it takes that parameter that you gave it and assigns it to itself. This is not what you want to do. What do you want to do? You want to take this parameter number1 that is being provided through the constructor and assign it to whom? Which instance variables? The number1 instance variable. So to say that I'm talking about that number1 that belongs to the object, just say this dot number. This is a reserved word that stands for the current object. So you're creating an object. The object that is being created has number1, number2 inside it. They are called this number1, this number2. This belongs to me. That's why the word this. And this number1 and this number2 on the right hand side of the assignment statement, since it is not qualified, which is the ones it will use? From the parameter list. Job done. That's how you create an object. During the creation of an object, the best way to initialize the instance variables of an object is to pass it through parameters of the constructor. That's what the job of the constructor is. Do you know what construction is? Right? We all know construction, the English word construction, making something. So what is it making? The object. So if it is making the object, shouldn't it define the values in the object? Yes. So here it defines it. So you have overloaded your constructors. Same name, different parameter list. One constructor, initialize your numbers to 0, which actually those two statements are useless because by default also they are 0, right? And the other constructor initializes them to what values? To the values provided via the constructor to the class. Now your object, if you create an object using the first constructor, what are the values of number 1 and number 2? 0, 0. If you create it using the second constructor, the values will depend upon what you give it. How many values do you have to provide? 2. Both of type double. The first value goes into number 1. The second value into number 2. Job done. Constructors are ready. Okay. Now, to complete the Java doc comments for this constructor, short description followed by the explanation of each parameter you are using. Use the @param for parameter. Tell, I'm talking about number 1. And I'll show you why. Give me 1 second. Let me show it to you first in Java API so that it makes sense. Let's go down towards a method or something. Okay, let's look at this one, though it's the constructor. Oh, it is the constructor. Okay, let's look at it. In the Java help, can you see the signatures of the method? Yes. If you can see the signatures, can you see the type of the parameters? Yes. Can you see the names of the parameters? Yes. Okay. And here are the parameters description. What is message? The object to display. What is message type? Whatever, whatever, whatever. What is option type? Whatever, whatever, whatever. What does it do? Creates an instance. That's exactly what I'm doing. My Java help will exactly look like this. So this Java help files have been created by some programmers who created these classes. And if you didn't have them, can you think what will happen? There is no help. So if you don't create Java help for your classes, who's going to use your classes? No one. There's no help. So if there is no manual, how will I use them? Who will tell me what is going on? So every assignment that you do, every project that you do in your real life, every class must have Java documentation. Every method must have Java documentation. The normal ones, the line comments, the block comments are for you and me, programmers, who are basically sitting together and working. These comments are for the user of your classes, people who will use your classes. If you don't make them, you don't have any users. What will you do with your class? Right? So every time there will be a requirement of Java doc commenting. And I'm telling you, I'll do it. I'll try to do as much as I can. So the first param, and I've called it number 1 because you can see it right here in the definition. You can see it. I'll show you. Okay. So what is param 1? A param 1 is a double. You needn't say double because there it is right there, a double. But if you want to, sometimes Java API has it and sometimes it doesn't. A double to do what? What are you doing with this number 1? What is the use of this number 1? To set or initialize. You can even say set. Just say set. The value we don't know what is the name of the instance variable. So don't use instance variable names here. Nobody can see the instance variables. So normal English, a double to set the first number of the calculator. Yeah, in the calculator. Isn't that exactly what number 1 does? Short description of the class, all your params one by one, @param, and then @return if there is a return statement, and then @exception if you have exception handling. For now, I don't have a return, so we are okay. Okay, next line, your second param. Same thing. What is the second parameter called? Number 2. What is it? A double. So you can, if you like, you can kind of just to save yourself time, nothing else. There. And this one is to set the second number. That's its job. The sequence is not important that it matches your parameter list, but it is good to match it. It makes life easy. One-to-one correspondence. First parameter, second parameter, third parameter. Okay, so before we go on, save this. Of course, it is get saved. Do this. Go to your project, say generate Java doc. Let's see what Java documentation has been created for you. You've put in Java doc comments. Let's see if it has been. So say generate. If you did not do this last week, you should point to the Java .exe file in your bin folder. You have to see that you have this here, not mine necessarily. Don't copy mine. Look where if you didn't do anything, you didn't change anything when you installed it, it should be in the Java folder in your program files on the C drive. Right? So look for it, browse it. And this is the class for which I want to create Java docs, not for this one. It says, where do you want to save them? I'll save them in the same folder in a directory called doc. I mean, you can change it if you like, but you don't have to. And then there's nothing in the next, it says only for public members. I'll say, yeah, only for public members. Java documents for private members doesn't make sense. Nobody can use your private members. You know what I mean? Nobody can. But if you want, you can say yes, private or package or protected. You can choose. Package will do it for everybody. Everything gets included. So it depends what you want to do. And say finish. There is nothing in the next, but you can always see if you're interested. Not much thing like it. I mean, you could change things, but I said, yeah, you have to do everything that I use and so on. When you become more polished, you will learn more stuff of this document. Okay, now it's generating. Okay, it has generated them. Go to your folder where you are saving your project. I think we can look at it from the left-hand side also in the pane, I'm sure. I think we can. Do you want to see? Is there a doc folder? You should be able to see it. Yeah, there it is, doc folder. And you should look for index.html. It's just that it will open up in the right-hand side window. That is not so neat. So it's not so neat to look at. But notice, so I'll just do it here just because I find it a little more easier to read. And I want to draw your attention, but you can do it there too. Okay, so we are in Intro to Java. We are on Thursday. We are doing lesson 2. See how organized it is. I created a package. There it is. Inside the package, there is a doc folder. Inside the doc folder, click on index.html and click on the simple calculator. Now I know I have to click on it. Okay, see. What does it say? It says the simple calculator class has inherited from the object class. Inheritance tree, that's the only one I have. It gives the pack. This is called qualification, where you put the package name dot the name of the class. And you can use it, right? Okay, look at this. It says, this is the short description I gave at the head. This class defines a simple calculator that can perform basic arithmetic operations, add, subtract, multiply, divide. We'll complete it. We'll say with 2 numbers so that we know that we are only dealing with 2 numbers. Do you see the version and the author? Yes. Let's go to the 2 calculators you wrote. They're listed there. Click on any one of them. There. You wrote all this yourself, didn't you? The short description, the param and the param, it's all here. How neat? Job done. So do you see the use of Java documentation? It's a necessity. I mean, it's up to you. If you don't want to do it, all you do is lose marks. If you do it, you gain marks and you gain the right way to do things. So it's up to you. I can force you to do anything, but I will always ask you to do it. Okay, so let's come back to Eclipse. Let's come back. You can close this file if you like, just because it's so... Okay, now just so that we kind of, for ourselves, we say it's clear, kind of let's add another one here. I didn't say with 2 numbers. I'm just going to add with 2 numbers, just so that we know we are only dealing with 2 numbers. Just making my definition more clear, okay? Otherwise, you'll say, why is she only using 2 numbers as instance variables? It makes it more clear. Are we okay? Is everything okay? Are you all okay with instance variables, constructors and everything? Can we move forward? Okay, let's move forward. Okay, next job. Let's try to create the getters and the setters now. You'll say, do we need them? Let's talk about it. Why do we need them? Why do I need a set method? You create an object, you give it 2 values, or maybe you create the one with 0, 0, and they have no values. Now you want to change the values or initialize the values inside your object. You need a button. You need a set method. You'll say, but constructor is doing it. Please keep in mind that the constructor's only job is to create an object. Every time if you start using the constructor, how many objects will you have at the end of the day? If you did 100 calculations, you will have 100 objects. That's not what you want to do. You want to buy a calculator. You should be able to vary your input into it and get your results. So we need the set methods. So let's write the set methods. Okay, so let's write it. Java documentation. start with a slash and a double star and end with a star and a slash. What does this method do? This method either sets for the first time or changes. Or we can say a method to set. That way we don't have to sets or changes. So the programmer decides that can the information inside the object be changed or not, or which information can be changed or not. It's the programmer who decides it. Not every class will have set methods. Not every class will have get methods. But I mean, here logically, doesn't it make sense that I should be able to change my numbers? Then I have to have a set method. How else will I change it? Because they are private, I can't access them outside the class. So this is the only way. A method to set or change the first number. If you are going to change something, you will provide a value, right? If you want to change something, you will provide a value. Let's call it the same thing, number 1. Making sense? Okay, what do you have to do? Let's write it. Okay, let's write the method. The method has to be public, otherwise it's, if it's not public, I can set it from outside. Does it need to, what is the return type? The job of sets. Think about the job of the set. To set a number. That's it. Is it returning anything to you? No. Return type? Void. The name of the method? Set number 1. Call it whatever you like. The parameter? One of the numbers. I can even say only number. You can even say number. It really doesn't matter. The number 1 is just making it more here. And then I can copy and paste for number 2, okay? Okay, what do you do here? You take, here I'll call it, so the aim was that I confuse you. Okay, let me show you this one also, something that doesn't confuse you at all. We've already done the confusion in the constructor. Does that make sense? Take the number parameter that is coming in and assign it to the number 1. Now you don't have to say this dot number 1. You could, if you like, on the left hand side, say this dot number 1, but you don't have to because the compiler is not confused. There is only one parameter called number and there is only one instance variable called number 1. So where is the confusion? Nowhere. If you want to kind of follow a kind of a pattern or be symmetric, which I like to be, I'll kind of stick with it. But this is just to show you I don't have to call it number 1. And whenever it comes with an error, hover your mouse over it, look at the error messages it is giving you and kind of go from there. Okay, so this method is ready, set number 1. Now, another use of set method. If you want to validate your data, you want to say, oh, number 1 has to be greater than 0. You will validate it here. The set method will validate your input before using it. You do it at one place in the set method, which tells me if I'm going to do it at one place and I already have this method called set number 1, why don't I do this? Call it. Instead of this assignment that you did here, instead of this assignment that you did here, invoke this method here. Invoke it from the constructor. Call it from the constructor. Why do you want to do the job twice? You will say, oh, that was also a single statement. This is also a single statement. What have you gained out of it? Yeah, but remember, this is also a simple calculator. When your set statements become large, they are validating your input and doing whatever extra work. And validation can be of so many types. Greater than 0. Name only consists of letters and the blank. And validation can be of any kind. You're giving an address, has to have a house number, what number, whatever. All validation is done in the set method. Since the set method is doing everything, just call the set method from the constructor. Why will you repeat those statements again? Put it at one place and call. So remove your assignment statement from the constructor and replace it by a call to the set method. Do you see the use? Do the job once and call. Now do the same thing for the other one. So since it will come, I know it will come. Let's do this also. I know it will come. and see if it is doing what you were doing before. Think about it. Let me draw your attention. When you call the set method and pass it the number 1 that was given to the constructor, what does it do? It assigns it to the number 1 of the class. It is doing the same job. But that's how you write code. You don't repeat code. Let a method do its job and let other methods use it. Why should the job be repeated at 1001 places? And comment this out. And put you here. So I've replaced this. Now if I've replaced this, can I also replace it in my default constructor? Why not? What can I do? And pass what to it? What should I pass to set 1? 0. There, job done. That's exactly what I want to do. Set it to 0. Comment out. And do the same thing here. But this time call the other method. And it was called set, it will be called set number 2. I mean, if you've written one, you know how to write the other. And let's comment this out also. So I'm commenting it so that you can see it. But of course, you're not going to write both things for me and comment out one. We are learning. This is a learning process. So basically, I'm saying this is the same as this and this is the same as this. It's saying it's red squiggly under number 2 because I haven't yet written it. I haven't yet written the set number 2 method. And this one, I didn't see a red squiggly because I didn't change it here. So we will be writing. We haven't written it. You will see a red squiggly. Don't worry about it. We haven't yet written it. Its job will be exactly the same. Then you can say, why are you writing 2 methods? Why don't you write just one method? Because it is doing the same thing. In one, it is setting number 1, and in the other, it is setting number 2. But it is doing a different job in a sense. It is setting, but it is setting different variables. Okay, so take this, copy, paste, change the name of the method. You don't have to change the name of the parameter, but again, because I want to keep it the same so that my head doesn't spin with so many variables. So these are still unique. Keep in mind, they are unique in the sense one is a instance variable and one is a local parameter. Anything else? Yeah, okay. Okay, copy paste, fine. There. Method is ready. Both set methods are ready. One is setting the first number, one is setting the second number. So now I have the option of creating an object and changing them. Changing number 1, changing number 2. What if you want to change both the numbers? Can you have a combined set method? Nothing stops you. You could have a combined set method and second numbers. Here, let's combine them. There is no rule as to what has to be done. You as a programmer decides what has to be done. Okay? This is very like the constructor, but it is not the constructor, keep in mind. This is a set method. It's not the constructor. Constructor is doing the same kind of job, but that's not what it is. Okay, so here set numbers, or we'll say set numbers. Set numbers. How many parameters will it take? 2. What will it do with them? It will in turn call but it is allowing you to do it together. You'll say, is it useful? Maybe you don't find it useful. Maybe another user finds it useful. It's better to press 2 buttons different or press only 1 button and do the same job. Right? Here, so I have a set method now. Please remember, this is not the, it looks like as it is doing the same job as the constructor. It is doing the same job as the constructor, but it is called set numbers. You did exactly the same thing in your constructor, but now here is the difference. The constructor creates an object and sets the value. This method, in the same object, you're calling it with an object name, it will change the values. Therefore, I write set and change. Do you see the difference? Set means for the first time, change means thereafter. Okay, are we okay? Our set methods are ready. You have two params, a method to set change the first and second numbers. This one just changed this message. Oh, and the name of the parameter. Copy paste, but please do it intelligently. And again, I haven't repeated my code. I've said, okay, you want both numbers to be set. This is how you can do it. Call it, and I'll pass it to the individual ones. Let's write our get methods. Those are easy ones. Everybody knows them. Now let's look at return. Now at return will not tell you the name of, nowhere am I mentioning the name of my instance variables. Nobody can see it. Can you see it in the Java API? What instance variables belong to a class? No, nobody can see it. So I don't mention them. So get methods don't take parameters. You know that it just returns the value. Sets return type is void and get return types are the number. Okay. Public method, because it has to be used outside the class. What is the return type of get number one? What are you returning number one? Double. Perfect. Give me input so that I know you're listening to me and not sleeping, right? Does it require any parameters? The get method, whose only job is to return something to you. Nope. Perfect. What does it return?
It's going to return number one.
Perfect.
Or this number one.
Yeah, this. Yeah, you could say this number one, or you could just say number one. There is no confusion here at all. Remember, in this code, is there any confusion about who is this number one? No. Look at the code.
They're calling it from the object.
Yeah, but the call is, but there is no parameter called number one. There is no local variable called number one. So the only number one that this method knows about is the instance variables. So it will return that. So you don't have to say this dot number one. You could say it, but you don't have to say. Okay. What about the second method? Same job. Do a control C. Copy. Don't forget your Java documentation, please. This is a different method altogether. It's not an overloaded one. It's doing a different job. You never return two numbers together, so we don't have a joint get. Every method only returns a value. So you don't have a joint get. You had a joint set, but you don't have a joint get. There? Job done. Sets are ready, gets are ready, constructors are ready. Now the other, not other important, every method is important, but now other methods. Have I missed something? Are we okay? Yeah, I don't think I have any red squigglies. Okay, now let's start writing our specific methods. Add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay. This method returns the sum of the two numbers. Okay. Will it take something from you? It is returning the sum of two numbers. How many of you say yes? Let's see. No, nothing is wrong or correct, right or wrong. If you're saying yes, people who are saying no now have to give me an argument. Andrew, what do you think? Why don't you need to pass it any parameters? Does the add method need parameters? I heard only one yes, which means everybody else is a no. So if no, why not? Think about it. Think about it for a minute. Think. Every object has the data inside it. You've already either initialized it using the constructor or the set methods, but the data is inside it. Now I want to add that data. Do I need any input from the outside world? No, the input is already inside the object. So the add method will not have any parameters because it already contains those numbers. The object already contains those numbers. If I was writing a normal add method in maybe main, definitely it would have it. But now think from class point of view. The class already has the data inside it. So we don't need to pass any parameters in the add method. What does the add method do? No parameters, but definitely what will it do? That's definitely something it will do, right? So write it, now write it. Do you understand why I don't need parameters? Because the data with which this add method has to work is inside the object. It belongs to the object. The object already has the numbers. You'll say, from where did it get it? Maybe when you created the object in the constructor, or maybe you did the set methods. You'll say, what if I didn't call the set methods? They have 0, 0. If you did the default constructor, but it has some values. An object will always have some values initialized, if nothing as default. Okay, so public method returns a double. Oh, well, let's complete it. A double for the, as I said, somewhere I've seen in API that they tell you the type and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, what do you want to call the method? Add numbers is good enough name. No parameters. What will it return? Take your number 1, add the number 2 to it, and return it. No local variables, nothing is required. It is a single statement. Job done. Where is this number 1 and number 2? These are the instance variables of your object. The object is already aware of them, irrespective of what their values are. That's not important. It would be 0, but they have a value. An object, whenever an object is created, its instance variables do have a value. They have to have a value, because otherwise the object is useless. Okay, copy and paste. Let's see the other 4 methods. Of course, I could do more in it, but I'm not, just because we don't want to complicate things. The next one, the next one, the next one. Complete. Let's complete them. Just because they're so similar. Okay, so let's start from the first one is add. So let's leave the add alone. Okay. Is there another one? Oh, there is. Oh, so maybe another one. No. Okay. So here, the first one is okay. Lines number 94 to 97 I need. That's my add numbers method. That's my first method. Okay. So now here, let's make the change in the second one that you copied. Instead of sum, what do you want to do? Difference. Right? It returns the difference. Now we'll write it simply first, and then we can put more things into it. Maybe the positive difference. Instead of add numbers, you could call it add numbers, but it's a silly thing to call, right? And anyway, there are no parameters, so how will I overload it? You can't overload 2 methods that are not related to each other. You only overload methods when it makes sense to overload them. Okay, what do you want to do? I mean, I'm not doing anything extra. I'm just saying subtract number. I could have said number 2 minus number 1, and we can improve it. We will. So job number 2 done, right? Job number 3. Right? Job number, completed. There is nothing to be done in product and addition, because we know that they are commutative in nature. A plus B is same as B plus A. A into B is same as B into A. It's the difference and the division that could be different, right? Okay, so let's call it multiply numbers. Oh, and keep changing the operator. Okay, you have a plus, you have a minus, and now you have a multiplication. Okay, now the last quotient. And again, I can have runtime errors. You can't divide 2 numbers if your second number is 0. And we will see how to do that. Don't worry, we will. With time, you will get everything. Okay, so that's complete. Now here we have to change it. This method returns the quotient of number 1. Or if we can't say number 1 or anything, we just have to say normal English comments. Have to be it just needs more commenting, because you call it the quotient and you have to say what that quotient is. And if once this is okay, you can say double the short description is Okay, you just have to give a little more just because, I mean, that was easy. Add the two numbers, subtract the two numbers, multiply the two numbers. But here you have to say, it's called the quotient. You can't say the divide of the two numbers. That is not kind of proper grammar, right? So this method returns the quotient of first number divided by the second number. Make sense? Right? Okay, so we are calling the method divide numbers. And what do you have to do here? Let's divide. There. No red squigglies. Syntax wise, it is okay. And this is, I only know this because I've said build automatically, guys. There's no magic here. I've said as I write my code, build it automatically, compile it automatically. So while it compiles, if there are any errors, I'll get red squigglies. I don't have any red squigglies anywhere. So my code is okay. Make sense? Right? So the method themselves, you will call add numbers, the result will come back to you. You will call subtract numbers, the result will come back to you. Let's try to do a little small thing since you've done this for sure. What if I wanted to find the positive difference of the two numbers? Positive means always subtracting the smaller from the larger. Let's see, you can do this for sure. For division, we can. Positive. Always subtract the smaller from the bigger. How can you do it? I mean, that's what my method does. That's what I want to do. You'll say, why are you doing it? Just because I want to do it. Okay, not you. Not because you've answered enough, right? Not because you know you have answered enough. Yes, try Navleen.
Which number is greater than if number 1 is greater than number 2, then it will return number 1 minus number 2, else it will return number 2 minus.
Perfect, perfect. So what statement are you using? She's using a decision-making statement. And that's exactly what you do. If I say subtract the smaller number from the bigger number, what will be your first reaction? You will check if which number is smaller and which is greater. Whoever is smaller gets subtracted, right? So let's do this. So if
We can also use math functions.
yes, that's another thing. Or you can, have you heard of the ternary operator?
I've used it, but we
Okay,
can discuss it.
you haven't discussed it. Okay, let me do exactly like Navleen said. And which functions, which methods are you talking about?
Max and max min.
But remember, the max and the min, the requirement is you will have to give the two numbers. It is just more work. But yes, you can. Nothing stops you. You can say find the max of the two,
Yes.
and then subtract the smaller from the bigger. Yeah, you can do that. You can use math functions, max and min. You can use the if statement, and I'll show you a ternary statement today. Okay, so if number 1 minus number 2, that means number 1 is greater. Is greater than or equal to will also do, right? I mean, you can put the equal in either way. It doesn't matter. That's what Navleen said. She said, check which number is bigger. So I've said, is number 1 bigger than number 2? Yes, it is. Then else. Return the opposite. Make sense? This is always going to return the positive difference. Understand the meaning of positive difference? The number will always be positive. So if the number is, one number is 2, the other number is 5, it will always do 5 minus 2. Doesn't matter who's who. If number 1 was 2 and number 2 was 5, before it would return 2 minus 5. Now it will always return 3. And again, this is just me doing it. If you didn't need it, then you wouldn't do it. You'll say, but that's not how we do math. If you give me the first number and you say number 1 minus number 2, that's exactly what I do. Sure, don't do it. This is just to show you that it can be done. And the ternary operator I was telling you about. So I'll comment it out. We'll keep our normal comment. I'll just comment this out so that you know it exists and it will work. I mean, you could do it. In a calculator, usually that's not what happens. Calculator just works as you tell it to work. If you say 5 minus 2, it doesn't do 2 minus 5. So you could leave the normal that we had. Here, what did we have? Number 1 minus number 2. Nothing. This is just brushing up your programming. Okay, now just the ternary operator, just because I mentioned it. The if, whenever you have an if else, a single if else, you can always replace it by an operator which is called the ternary operator, because it consists of 3 parts, ternary for 3. Okay, this is what you will do. This is how it looks. Return, right? What do you want to return? You want to return, oh. In this one, there are two answers, either this or this. Okay, so let me see. If number 1 is greater than equal to this. Okay, let's see. This is how I'll write it. Okay, so what did Navleen say and exactly what I'm writing? I'm saying if number 1 is greater than or equal to the same if condition, I'm writing my if condition as the first part. It has 3 parts to it. That's why it's called the ternary. Therefore, you put a semicolon and a colon. Here are the 3 parts, just for information. And you know what? So that it's not green and you can see it more clearly, I'll just write it and then I'll comment it out afterwards here, so that you know what I'm doing. Okay. What am I doing in part 1? Writing my condition that I wrote in if. If the number 1 is greater than number 2, what do you want to return? Number 1 minus number 2. Write your return here. It's more compact. Here, this is what you want to do. If the condition is true, this is what you'll say, but where did you write the return statement? The return statement is right here. I write it once. It will evaluate this expression and it will give you the answer back. Okay. Now, if it is not, what do you want to do? If it is false, what do you want to do? There, that's the ternary operator. So when, what doesn't it like?
Don't use a question mark.
Oh, you're right. There had to be something, right? You're right. The question mark. And now what? Did I miss my? No, I didn't. Okay, so what? Oh, you cannot have 2 return statements because, I mean, this is unreachable. It says unreachable code. You're returning something and now you're again saying return something. That's another thing that's good that has come up. You should know that in Java or basically in anything. I ask you a question, what is 2 plus 3? You tell me 5. I'm not waiting for another answer. I mean, does it make sense? No. So that's exactly what it is saying. The other squiggly, that's exactly what it is saying. It is saying this statement is, bring your mouse to it. Unreachable code. You can't reach this line ever, because what does the return statement do in a method? Takes you back to whoever invoked that method. So the what do you call it? Control. The control goes back to the calling method. So this is the called method, and whoever is calling it, could be main or whatever it is, the control goes back. So once the control goes back, the second return statement is useless. So therefore, it is saying you can't do it. But that's the ternary operator. Is the ternary operator okay? Do you understand it? It replaces an if else. Look at it again. If number 1 is greater than or equal to number 2, this is what I want you to do. Subtract the number 2 from number 1. Else, this is what I want to do. This statement, the ternary statement, gives you an answer. All you're doing is returning that answer. Right? This is called the ternary operator from its name because it has 3 parts. And since, again, as I said, a simple calculator doesn't do that, we'll leave us. But this is all for your information. Okay? Now, what about division, guys? What do you find in division? What is a big thing that you have to remember in division? Can you divide by 0? Can number 2 be 0? It throws an exception. This exception is called divide by 0. We human beings say when you divide by 0, the answer is infinity. In a kind of, we are trying to say it's undefined. I mean, it doesn't make sense. How can you divide an apple amongst 0 students? I mean, it is not logical. So when you try to divide by 0, and you will say, maybe that situation will never arise. What if I create an object with the first constructor? I have 0 by 0. Or I change my second number to 0. I can change it. There is a set method. So what is your job now? As a programmer, you must handle this error. This is called exception handling. So your method should be able to handle that exception. Now, there are a few ways in which exceptions are handled. This method says, oh, I don't know. If you give me a 0, I'm just going to return you something. And notice I can't do anything in it. If I check, I could check. I said, if number 2 is 0, suppose I say, if number 2 is 0, then say back division cannot be done. But say back division cannot be done. The return type is double. So I can't give back a string, division cannot be done. You can say, oh, okay, then return something like a random value minus 999. But what if minus 999 is the answer of something? It is a valid answer. You'll say, okay, let's print it on the screen. System out println numbers cannot be divided. No. No method prints anything. Have you ever in Java class used a method that comes out with a message? No. If it has to come out with a message, it will return that message to you. But if it returns the message, the return type is string. I can do that because my return type is double. I cannot print a message. I cannot return a message. I have to return a double. And I don't want to return a random number -999 or 0 or 999 because they're all valid answers. Maybe I can return a constant. If a constant infinity is defined, I can maybe return that. We can check that.
Well, you can't divide by 0, so the answer to a division question can never be 0.
But 0 divided by 5 is 0.
That doesn't work.
It does. 0 divided by 5 is 0. Mathematically? Okay, let's check. I know what you're trying to say. Let's check. Okay, let me open up my...
That makes sense.
You can have an answer of 0. Okay, so you can do this. You can't say 9 divided by 0, though I don't know what my calculator will say. I don't know if it will say error or it will say infinity. Let's see. It says cannot divide by 0. It is giving a message. Let's do the opposite, what you were saying. Yeah, 0 divide. You can do it. It's logic. There's nothing. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I know. You're not dividing anything. But if you're not dividing anything, what does each person get? Nothing. The answer is 0. So 0 is a valid answer. Any number is a valid answer. It could be. Like, I don't know. It could be. Because every answer is possible. So the only answer that I could maybe send back is maybe infinity. But we'll have to check if there is a constant called infinity in Java. And if it is of type double. We can do that. We'll Google it and see. I know NaN. You can get an NaN for not a number. And I think when you divide floating point numbers, Java comes up with infinity as the answer. But when you try to divide integer numbers, it gives you a runtime exception. As far as I remember. We can quickly write a main method and maybe do it, right? When you do 2 divided by 0, it gives you a runtime exception. But if you do 2.0 divided by 0, it doesn't give you an exception. Let's quickly check that. But if there is an infinity value, let's see if there is. I'm sure there is a constant called infinity in Java. The constant is called infinity, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. How to implement inflate in Java? Double. See, the double and the float types have the positive infinity constant. Okay, so what is their type? Looks like it is double. Oh, let's go to the help center. Maybe that would be much more reliable, right? Okay, so there is the class double. The double class has been available since 1.0. These are the field summaries. Static int. Max exponent. No, not this. Positive infinity. A constant holding the positive infinity of type double. There. I could say return positive infinity. I could use an if statement and say positive infinity. But for your information, this won't work with integers. We are safe because we are using doubles. But you don't have to think of a solution that only works for you. You should be thinking of a generic solution. But we have a solution. There is the constant. It is a static final constant, belongs to the class double, and a constant holding the positive infinity of type double. It is equal to the value returned by double dot long bits to double, whatever it is, right? So that's the value. Now, once you have this constant, what you can do in your application, you can check. Did you return me double infinity? If you return me double infinity, then you can print the message on the screen. Main can do it. Main is an application. Main can say division cannot be performed. We can do this. But if you don't want to get into any of this mess, and be generic, handle the exception. Handle it. If your number, if it is division by 0 and the system does not handle it, unfortunately it handles it in double. So it won't give me a runtime exception if I do it quickly. Let me do it quickly. It won't. But if it does, then my code should be able to handle it. I don't want to see those red error messages on the screen. And what a class basically does is, a class does this. It can do a couple of things. It can either handle it itself. It handles the error right in the class description, in its own code. Or it says, I have found an exception, I'm giving it back to you. Because my purpose is division, that's my promise to you. This is called design procedure in Java. The methods say, if you give me the right thing, I'll do it for you. But if you don't give me the right thing, I'm not going to give you an answer back. I'm going to tell you some exception has occurred and my job is done. You gave me something wrong, it's your headache to take care that you don't give me something wrong. This is a design procedure in Java. So you can either handle it in your own code in the class, which we can do, or you can simply say, you say, I know that this can occur. If this occurs, I'm going to give you a kind of a message back. This is called throwing an exception. I'm going to throw an exception to you. You do whatever you want. It's your job, not my job. And that's exactly what the calculator does. If you try to do something, in 0, it gave a message, but that message is coming from the display of the thing. The inner calculation is not doing it, the displaying it. So there are a few options. Not having said that we cannot do it, we will do it. But right now, very quickly, let's do this just because we are running short of time. So I'm leaving the division here right now. I know my floating point numbers will not create a problem. So I'm okay, but I will handle it. I will take care of it maybe in an example where it will make more sense. Okay, so this is done. Now do this. Just so that I can show you. My class definition is ready, guys. It is ready. But it is of no use till I use it. Okay, so this is how you use it. Go and create another class. Another class. Let's call it test calculator. Now this is your application that will have main. So put it in main. Check the box. So if everybody's class is ready, now we are going to test our class. This is the tester. This is the driver. Okay, so not too much in this class. I'll write the comments afterwards. Tester doesn't have a lot. Nobody's going to use your tester. You are writing the tester to test your code. Okay, so let's do it. Let's create a simple calculator. Call it cal1 and call it with the new simple calculator. Because I misspelled it, it's not giving me any help. Otherwise, it would have. Misspelled in the sense here. Okay, that's one I calculate. Okay, this is my first one. Okay, now create another simple calculator object. Do you know what I'm doing? I'm declaring an object of type simple calculator, and I'm creating it also by calling the constructor. All familiar with this statement? If not, ask. Okay, so what are the two numbers you want to pass? Just let me pass 2 and 0. Just because I want to show you what happens in division when you do. Two objects get created. If I take this code and put it in BlueJ, you can actually see the two objects with your eyes. I mean, you can see them. I can show it to you if you're interested. It just is so visual. Are we all okay with 7 and 8? Lines number 7 and 8? Why am I writing it in main? Because main is the method that automatically runs. So that class cannot be run, guys. If you try to run that class, execute that class, it won't run. It can only compile because there is no main method in it. And you will say, why don't you put a main method in it? Because a class is a definition. If everybody started putting a main method in those thousands of classes in the Java API, gone. Can you think? All there is in the Java API is what? Class definitions. You use those classes in your application. That's exactly what I'm doing. I've written a class and I'm using it in an application. Nobody has written a main in their class definition. Have you ever seen a main in the class definition of Java API? No, it's just a definition. They're not executable programs. You create an object of the string class and use it. You create an object of the scanner class and use it. And where do you do all this? In your main. Okay, very quickly, just to show you the result. Just because I have 5 minutes. I want to show you the result. Oh, you know what? I could have actually, the first one is, what is 0 divided by 0? I don't know. We can check, okay? I've never, I mean, I know 0 divided by 9 or anything is 0, but I don't know the opposite. Is it undefined or not? I've never thought about it. Okay, let's do this. Let's try to call the division method with your cal 1. Just very quickly, no prettiness here. Call the divide. This is how you call it. You know that, right? Oh, what was it? Divide numbers. Why is it's not helping me? Eclipse usually helps you, right? As soon as you do a dot, it will help you. Okay, here, let's call it with calculator 2. We will know what we get as an answer. And let's call it with another calculator. Or you know what? Let's change it. Take your cal 1, set number 1, or let's say set numbers. Now it's helping me. No, set numbers. Here. Okay, let's change them. 5, 2. So we'll have a real result now, like a result that will make sense. Okay, so this is what I did. I created a simple calculator with 0, 0, and I'm showing the result. I know it's kind of readability will be poor, but let's see the result. I created a calculator with 2 and 0, and I divided it. 2 divided by 0, I don't know what the result will be. I have no clue. I think doubles just return you positive infinity. And then I kind of changed the numbers. The 0, 0 in cal 1 I replaced by 5 and 2. Notice where am I changing it? I'm not passing it through add, divide. I have methods to do that. I'm changing it to 5, 2 and doing it. Run this code. Run it. Let's see. Let's see what is expected. Okay, so the first one says 0 divided by 0 is not a number. NaN is a constant defined in Java for not a number. The second one says it is infinity, as was expected in Java, as was expected in doubles. Won't work in ints, believe me. And the answer of the third one is 2.5, which is the correct answer. So my class is okay. Except that maybe to a human, to a layman, NaN won't make sense. You say, what is NaN? To us it makes sense because we are programmers. Maybe even to a general person, infinity doesn't make sense, but to mathematicians it will make sense. So if you want to take care of all this and say, but you know what, there is no error to handle here, there is no exception, it is not throwing an exception. So I don't have to handle anything. Like I can only handle exceptions, my code can only handle exceptions if exceptions are being thrown by the GRE, but there are no exceptions here, just because I'm using doubles. Try to change it to ink at home and see what happens. It will come up with exceptions. For me, it is a big change, but I don't want to do it, but you make a copy of it and then change it and see what happens. But we will learn exception handling, but it's not a part of this course, but we will need it, so I do it. Not necessarily in depth, but I do. So this works.
If there is an exception, so we'll be handling that exception in the method or the class?
Both options are available. Both options are available. Sometimes classes handle that, but notice usually all the classes, all the methods in classes says throws. You notice in the headings, throws. It just throws it. It says you handle it. You gave me something wrong, you handle it. That's what it does, right? That's what usually methods do. But there are two ways. You handle it in your code, or you still have to handle it, but not in the class code, in your main. I mean, it is still your job as a programmer, but classes usually don't handle it. Classes just throw it back, and who is using it? Main. Main will handle it. It is still your job, because to the user you are still giving the package. You are still giving main. To him, to her or him, the front end is still your main. So you will handle it, except that are you going to handle it in the class definition, or are you going to handle it in your application? And if you don't handle it in the application, it goes to the GRE. And GRE does what? Again, gives those red messages. Somebody has to handle it. So whether you handle it in the class, which is not common, you will handle it in your main. And if you don't handle it in either, GRE will handle it. And it doesn't know how to handle it, it will be there. Okay, I'll put these two Java programs on Blackboard, the ones that we did today. Is that okay? Okay. So we will continue with this next week. Please be ready for an in-class next week. It may happen that the in-class just to, I don't know, because the other class is missing it, you will get an advantage, but that's how it is, right? We'll see how it goes. I'll see you next Thursday. And next Thursday, the class most probably will be for 2 hours. I will definitely put a note on Blackboard on Wednesday, just to let you know. If things change, I'll let you know. Okay? So it's just so that you know. Yes. Go ahead.
Next Wednesday.
Thursday, Wednesday. Why are we talking Wednesday? Relational database. Okay.
Right. It's about this class though. I've been using NetBeans.
Yeah. Okay.
But I got a little lost during your lecture because you were using Eclipse and you're doing it in the opposite order that I did it with NetBeans last semester.
What do you mean? Can you explain what you mean by opposite order?
When I create packages in NetBeans, it automatically creates a main method, and then I would have to create a class description in a separate class outside of it. So I was a little confused when you started working. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe this is something I can't really follow along with right now with NetBeans. So I wanted to know if next week, on Wednesday after relational database in the morning, if you have time in your office,
sure.
I'd like to come and maybe get you to help me.
Yeah, I can look at what NetBeans does so that I have an idea too.
We do both of us. I was actually hoping you'd teach me how to use Eclipse properly.
Sure.
Like just everything I would need to know to
Sure.
go properly.
Sure. Next Wednesday, I'll remember.
After class
in my office,
is
A155B.
A155B.
You're welcome. Guys, come in. Guys, you can come in. I just want to wind this up. You can take your seats. I'll leave. Who's your teacher now? Who comes in at this time? Sorry? Oh, you haven't met him yet? No, not last week? Okay. Oh. You're most welcome.
Sorry.
Your Punjabi is so thet, even I can't understand it. It's so thet. That's what you call it, right? Thet Punjabi. So you are Sikhs by origin? Is that what? Are you Sikhs or are you Punjabis? Oh my God, that's so tough. I am Punjabi too, but I can't speak it and I can't understand it. I mean, the ones you speak. It has a different flavor to it, right? Okay, guys, it's up. Java programs are up for you guys. What we did till today, okay? Ooh.